Adam Smith, in his treatise 1776, identified the agency problem that portrayed doubt about the efficiency of corporate stewardship. He questioned who is responsible for the protecting and promoting shareholders' value. This signaled the beginning of what is today known as corporate governance. According to him, being the managers of other people's money rather than their own cannot be expected that they managers should watch over it with the same anxious vigilance which they will watch over their own. Negligence and profusion, therefore, must always prevail more or less in the management of the affair of such a company. Brodsky in 1984 stated that governance is different from management. If management is about running business, governance is about seeing that it's run properly. All companies need governing as well as managing. One of the earliest definitions of corporate governance is the one given by Lord Carberry in 1982 as the system by which companies are directed and controlled. The Center for European Policy Studies define corporate governance as the whole system of rights, processes, and control established internally and externally over the management of a business entity with the objective of protecting the interests of all stakeholders. In more comprehensive manner, the Institute of Internal Auditor, USA, IIA, I cited is Dana and Larry define governance as the process that deal with procedures utilized by the representative of the organization stakeholder to provide oversight, risk, and control process administered by management. Drivers of corporate governance: creating a long-term growth and shareholders' value, global financial crisis, corporate failures, executive greed, income inequality, economic development, globalization, worldwide privatization, commercialization wave, pension fund reform, takeover waves of the 1980s, deregulations and interpretations of capital markets. The story of corporate governance disaster came as a result of ineffective board, held by inadequate control environment, poor strategies, dominant CEO one-man show, independent control, inadequate control environment, judge acquisitions, greed, hubris, and irresponsibility, accidental external triggers such as disaster. Corporate governance pillars are accountability, fairness, transparency, independence. Good corporate governance has 7 distinguished characteristics. 1. Discipline, transparency, independence, accountability, responsibility, fairness, and social responsibility. Some corporate governance codes across the globe. Almost every country has introduced corporate governance codes or the other. These codes majorly have key principles and provision in common with no significant difference. We consider some of the salient points of the codes listed below. The UK Corporate Governance, that is Carberry Framework, the US Corporate Governance Code, the King 4 Report, that is South African Code, the 2018 Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance. These could have similar provision boundaries on pillars of corporate governance. The FRCN Code of Corporate Governance, Structure and Provisions. In line with Section 11C, 49, 50, and 51, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria Act The National Code of Corporate Governance for Private Sector and Non-for-Profit Organizations were issued by the Council on 17 October 2016, effective immediately. Following wide criticism, the code was suspended by the Honorable Minister of Industry and Investment on 28 October 2016. The code philosophy. The Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance is a principle-based code and uses the applied and explained philosophy. Applied philosophy. All principles are ideals that companies should strive for in their governance journey. The principles are basic and fundamental to good corporate governance. Explain philosophy. It is expected that companies should provide explanation in form of a narrative account, reference their practices that demonstrate the application of principle. The explanations to address which recommended or the other practices have been implemented and how they drive the outcome of the principle. The practice recommended in the code are positioned at level of governance, the best practices, but may not be applied at the same level of all companies. So applied philosophy is that all principles are ideas that the company should strive for in the governance journey. The principles are basic and fundamental to good governance. It is expected that companies should provide explanation in form of narrative account referencing their practices, applications, and principle of the principle. That is explained philosophy. It is expected that companies will adopt scale practices in demonstrating the principle in accordance with the following proportional consideration, particularly to the company: the size of the company in time of turnover and workforce, the resources, extents and complexities of activities. Since the code is not a set of rigid rules, it is responsibility of companies that are governed by the code and their board to use flexibility and scalability provided by the code. To manage the cost of governance, each organization can determine its governance structure as long as they are consistent with the principles and recommended practice outlined in the code. Structure of the code. There are 7 parts. Number of sections in code part A to G. 28 principle. Corporate governance ideas that companies should strive to embed. And recommended practice. Governance best practice to be adopted on scale level by each company depending on their growth trajectory. Structure of the code. Part A stipulates boards and officers of the board and contains 16 principles. Part B deals with assurance and contains with 4 principles. Part C talk about relationship between stakeholders and contains 3 principles. Part C addresses business ethical and contains 2 principles. Part C covers sustainability and has 1 principle which addresses environmental sustainability and governance issues. Part F covers transparency and disclosure with 2 principles, and Part G provides definitions. Structure of the code, the 28th principle. The 2018 Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, enforced by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, comprises 28 principles designed to foster ethical leadership, sustainability, and transparency across all public and significant private entities. Structure around board effectiveness, risk management, and stakeholder relations. It operates on an applied and explained basis to enhance investment confidence. Part A, Board of Directors and Officers of the Board. The role of the board is responsible for strategic leadership, ethical culture, and oversight. Board structure and composition. An appropriate balance of skill, experience, gender, and independence. Chairman responsible for the leadership of the board and ensuring effectiveness. Managing Director responsible for the day-to-day management and implementing strategies. Executive Directors active in management and supporting the CEO. Non-executive Director provide independent judgment and oversight. Company Secretary provide governance support advisory to the board. Part B.